Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you here today. How many of you were here for the candle lighting service on Monday night? Yeah. Well, some people who aren't here are missing out on a treat today because there's nothing better than the aftermath of Christmas to keep the celebration going. And that song really brought it home. Thank you. A friend was coming out of church, and a traditional preacher was outside shaking everyone's hands as they left. And my friend went over to shake the preacher's hand, and the preacher grabbed him and said, "Hey, you need to join the army of the Lord." He said, "Pastor, I'm in the army of the Lord." He said, "Well, where have you been at Christmas except Christmas and Easter? I only see you Christmas and Easter." He said, "I'm in the Secret Service." So I venture to say that it was really crowded in here on Monday night. But we have some members who are in the Secret Service. And they may be watching from home. So we hope you'll come back when you're able to get free. There were 3 buildings in town that were being overrun by squirrels. And one was the town hall, the other was the hardware store, and the other was the church. And so they were trying to figure out what they could do about these. In the middle of service, there'd be squirrels running around at the church. Customers stopped coming to the hardware store because they were scared of the squirrels. And they couldn't have a town hall meeting for all the noise the squirrels were making in the attic. So they were trying to figure out what to do. So the town hall came up with a really good decision. And that was they got in a whole bunch of cats. And the cats scared the squirrels off. But 3 days later, the squirrels came back because they had to get rid of the cats. The cats were destroying the town hall. I don't know how many of you have cats, but they have minds of their own. So once they got rid of them, the squirrels came back. So then the hardware store said, "We've got a better idea." They brought in some humane traps. They trapped the squirrels, and they went to the edge of town and released them. And you know what happened? 3 days later, the squirrels found their way back to the hardware store. The church had the best idea. They baptized the squirrels, and they only came on Christmas and Easter. We have a few squirrels in our congregation. So I want to talk to you today about the true meaning of Christmas, and it's not just showing up on Christmas or for the candlelight service, because the true meaning of Christmas is in our hearts, and it's every day. Last Sunday, Duke asked Nian and I to talk about that, to talk about what is Christmas to us individually. Nian talked about her upbringing in the Buddhist faith and being denied the opportunity to celebrate Christmas until they begged her father, and he finally let them get a Christmas tree. I grew up in the Baptist faith, where Christmas is huge like most other ceremonies and rituals in Christianity, and Christmas was huge in my family. The one thing that we did after Christmas was called Watch Night. How many of you have ever heard of Watch Night? Yeah, there are a few of you Baptists in here. Not just Baptists, but AME, CME. Most of the African American churches celebrate Watch Night. Watch Night is New Year's Eve. And there's a special celebration similar to our candle lighting, where the congregants come and they watch. It started in this country with the African Americans. It didn't start here. It started in Czechoslovakia, I believe, years before, and then John Wesley brought it to the Western world in about the 1700s. But the African American church tradition began 155 years ago, before the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, before President Abraham Lincoln signed the document that let many of the slaves, not all, be free. And so the watch night on New Year's Eve was the night before the proclamation was signed, 1853. And the slaves sat in their churches, in their campgrounds, and waited for the night to pass and the signing to occur, making them free. So we still celebrate this watch night in African American churches around the country. You can even see some of them maybe live streamed today. A watch night has a deeper meaning than just that. It's watching for the new year to unfold. And we do that in a ritual called the burning bowl ceremony. What will I leave behind that I don't want to carry forward into the new year? What do I want to let go of or release? So next Sunday, you have the opportunity to participate in our annual burning bowl, where you actually let go of and release into the fire those things you've identified on a small piece of paper that you no longer want to carry forward into the new year. And like Christmas is every day, the burning bowl ceremony is an everyday event as well. Because there's always something we need to release. We may be reluctant to, we may be feeling like we're holding on to things because they're comfortable, but we no longer have need of them. They no longer serve our highest good. And then following that, on January 13th, we'll have the white stone ceremony and the all call for new members. We hope that you'll be here for that and tell your friends. And the white stone, this is when you write down, you've released those things that you no longer want to carry forward, that no longer serve your highest good. And now you want to write down what you are going to be called, what you're calling forward for yourself in the new year. Sort of like a New Year's resolution. When we do the burning bowl, we always pick up a little card, and the card will have a word or a phrase on it called an angel card. And it's amazing how those cards sound to us when we say them out loud. Mine last year was creativity. And I've been amazed at how many opportunities I've had to express creativity. And sometimes it's become difficult to, I'm searching for something but can't quite find it, but I'm amazed because when you pray for something, when you're calling forth something, you don't get that something that you're calling forth, you get the ability to demonstrate it. So if you're praying for peace on earth, goodwill to all, everything that doesn't look like peace is going to show up. And you're going to think, well, why am I not getting what I prayed for? You are. You're getting the opportunity to demonstrate exactly what you're calling forth. If you're praying for strength, all of a sudden you don't grow great muscles. But things will come up in your life that will test your strength, that will help you to develop that muscle. Mentally, physically, emotionally, wherever that strength is needed. So I want to talk to you today about how do we bridge that gap between the old and the new. And I think the true meaning of Christmas tells us exactly what we're asking. We learn as children this Christmas story, don't we? We revisit it throughout our lives. We live out the best Christmas we ever had, the worst Christmas we ever had, the most memorable Christmas we ever had. So we play this story over and over again, but there's much more to this story than the literal interpretation. In Unity, we like to look beyond the literal to the metaphysical, beyond the physical. So the Christmas story is about this little baby that's born and placed in a manger in a horse stable. The little baby predicted in Isaiah, the Old Testament, that would come to save the world. That's the Christmas story. But that's not the story of Christmas for you. It's nice to read about this little baby and beautiful, who doesn't like little babies? Beautiful little baby, but there's more to this story. There's something that occurred after the story that I think is more significant in the true meaning of Christmas. And after the story, after that part of the story, Herod, the king, who wanted to not have any other king and had heard that there was going to be this newborn king to be the King of Kings, and as predicted in Isaiah, the Prince of Peace, Mighty Counselor, Almighty God. This was this coming of this king, and Herod was hearing none of it. Nobody could be a king but him. So he asked the three wise men to go and seek out this king, and when they do, come back and tell him where he can find him so he can worship the king. But that wasn't really what he wanted to do. And the wise men were wise. They were smart enough to know better. So when they found the newborn baby, they decided the best thing to do is turn and go in a different direction home so Herod wouldn't catch up with them and make them tell him where to find the baby. Because they knew Herod's goal was to get rid of this King of Kings, so he wouldn't have any competition. So one night, Joseph has a dream, and God speaks to him in the dream and says, Herod is out to get your baby. Now, he didn't say it in those words. Those are my words. But there's danger coming. You need to flee. You need to take Mary and take the baby Jesus, and you need to go to Egypt before Herod catches up with you. Herod had ordered all baby boys under the age of 2 to be brought before him and killed. By the process of elimination, if he killed all of them, he could get to Jesus, right? That's the story, kind of like a Cliff Notes version of the story. So what is that about? What does that mean to you? What is the true meaning of this Christmas story in your life? See, one of the things that hit me about this story was here was a homeless family. They couldn't find a place. When they were ordered to go back to Bethlehem, to Joseph's city of birth, for the census by Herod, they couldn't find a place to go, and she was about to give birth. All that was available was this horse stable and a manger to put the baby in, a trough where the animals fed from. Humble beginnings, homelessness. And now they're having to leave where they were and go someplace else, not knowing whether they'd be wanted or not. The story of Jesus' life is a story of humility. It's a story of unconditional love. It's a story that tells us that we're all family. We don't necessarily look the same. We don't come from the same backgrounds or cultures. We may not have the same beliefs and ideologies, but we belong to each other. We belong to each other. There's a song that I love that our choir often sings. The first time when I sang in the choir, I used to wish Steve would have us sing that song every Sunday. It's called Many Gifts, One Spirit. Many gifts, one spirit. Many songs, one voice. Many reasons, one promise. Many questions, one choice. Oh, God, remind us we are not alone. And our differences unite us. We are walking to your love. Take our many ways of working, blend each color of each soul into the beauty of a rainbow. Give us life, Lord. Make us whole. And I think that last word summarizes what Jesus came to teach us, that we are one. We cannot be whole if we are divided. A house divided will not stand. I don't want to make this a political statement, but I think it's necessary to say a house divided will not stand. We in this church have the opportunity to stand up and say we are all one people. We don't just represent the people at Unity on the Plaza in Kansas City, in Missouri, in this country, but we are all one people, not just one nation, undivided. We are one people in the world. And what's happening to our brothers and sisters anywhere else is happening to us. Jesus said, what you do for the least of them, you do for me. What you do to the least of them, you do to me. If the homeless family of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus had gone to Egypt and there had been a barricade keeping them from their asylum, they're running for their lives to save this precious child who had been brought into the world to make a difference, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. I'm very careful when I speak not to polarize people. I don't want to say you're wrong and you're wrong, whatever side you sit on. I just want us to understand that we are one. And we need to work together as one, realizing that what happens to someone else may as well be happening to me. So this is an old story. It goes back centuries. Jesus was born into armed conflict. He was born into fighting. He was born in the middle of a war, a cultural war, a storm of differences between people who forgot that we are all brothers and sisters. We're all one family. The story is told that in 1914, in the middle of a battle, World War I, two opposing sides of soldiers on Christmas Day decided to sit down and have a meal together, talk about their families. The generals and the commanders were upset. That was not their idea of how to have a war. All of their soldiers stopped fighting for one day. And then the generals and commanders, their bosses, won out, and the next day, these people who had become friends overnight started fighting each other again. In 1863, during the height of the American Civil War, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote a poem called Christmas Bells. You've heard it as a song renamed I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. The poem begins with a celebration, and then Longfellow captures it in the reality of what was going on, the Civil War. He writes, "And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men." There have been wars and rumors of wars for millennia. To this day, we have people just in search in our own community just to survive, just for food, and those of us who have way too much more than what we need, not willing to share. So what's the point? What is the real meaning of Christmas? And why do we just celebrate it one day? Is it about this little baby born into a world of struggle? Is it decorating and putting up the lights, sending Christmas cards that say peace on earth, goodwill to all, when we know that's not what really is showing up in our lives? It's no wonder that so many people reject church. They reject the Bible, which Unity uses as a textbook. They reject spirituality and Christianity because we say one thing and we do another. Now, we're in this room not having a war, but the war is within ourselves. Maybe in our homes, maybe with our neighbors, our friends, our siblings. And we'll get together at the end of the service and we'll hold hands and we'll sing, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." But we mean them. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with them. Because if they did what they were supposed to do, we would have peace on earth. It's them, not me, right? But peace is created from the inside out, as are the 4 adventures leading up to Christmas: faith, an inside job; peace, an inside job; love, an inside job; and joy from the inside out. If I'm not at peace with myself, how can I bring peace on earth to anyone else? I like what the great guitarist Jimi Hendrix said. When the power of love overcomes the power, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, there will be peace on earth. So there is some good news about the true meaning of Christmas, because we're here. We come here on Sundays for a reason. We come here to this service because we want to be the peace that we want to see in the world. We want to hear a message that inspires us to go out and be that we seek. that we don't see being played out everywhere. We want to be a messenger of peace, a messenger of love, a messenger of joy, or we wouldn't be here. And we wouldn't be watching it on TV, on live stream. And we wouldn't even show up as part of the Secret Service during the Monday night candle lighting. But in the time of Jesus, something was sorely lacking that we also see lacking today, and that's compassion. That's what the story's about. Dr. Sharif Abdullah, who has a program called Shadow to Light, and when you attend the Spiritually Speaking discussion group after the service today at 11:30 in the Heritage Room, you can ask Dr. Catherine Thomas and many of our congregants who've participated and are ambassadors in that program. But he started out with a program called Creating a World That Works for All. And he works tirelessly around the world to create that kind of atmosphere, to help other people develop the attitude of peace so we can spread it and create that kind of world. He writes, the true meaning of Christmas is not just today but every day. And he writes, loving ourselves as our neighbors is a first step. Loving neighbors as ourselves, not just some of them, those people. You know, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with them. It has to start with us. Not people who are like us, think like us, look like us, but everybody. Practicing compassion and inclusivity is another way that he says we need to do that. Getting to know people who don't necessarily look like or think like you, who don't come from where you come from. You'd be surprised how much you can learn. And we do that in our Courageous Conversations group, if you'd ever want to join us. We look for opportunities where we can bridge that gap. And then sharing resources that are often kept from those who are not included in our society. Now, I'm a frequenter of late night talk shows sometimes. And I like to watch like Stephen Colbert and there are several that I look at. Saint Stephen Colbert said, if this is going to be a Christian nation that doesn't help the poor, either we have to pretend that Jesus was as selfish as we are, or we've got to acknowledge that he commanded us to love the poor and serve the needy without conditions, and admit that we just don't want to do it. In other words, to experience the true meaning of Christmas, not last Sunday or last Tuesday, but the true meaning of Christmas every day, we have to make the pursuit of faith, peace, love, and joy an everyday opportunity to share that with everyone we meet. We can't just wait for the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. We end each service in that song. We say, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. That's what the angels said when they heralded in the birth of this baby to the wise men. Follow the star. The star is in you. If you want to find the true meaning of Christmas, look for your star. You are the meaning of Christmas. I invite you to take this idea of making Christmas every day into your consciousness. I invite you to think about opportunities that you have to give of your gifts of self without being asked and without expecting anything in return. Like the song of the little drummer boy, give what you have. Someone has said, if you give to the world the best that you have, the best will come back to you. Jesus taught that. So as we think about the true meaning of Christmas for ourselves, go into your heart space and ask yourself, how can you make Christmas every day and bring about peace on earth, goodwill to all? Think about that as we move into meditation.